Hello everyone, welcome back to the KMTRADERS channel. So this is the full market analysis volume 95. Again, give you an insight of what we've got to come for next week and give you our thoughts of reviewing our analysis from last week as well. So in our last video we've got some annotations on, so we're just going to leave them drawn and ultimately change them along the way. So we are going to start off with gold. So what we spoke about last week was potentially two scenarios. We had essentially one scenario where price would drop off, and the other one is where price would break towards the upside and potentially have a reversal. So as we can see, we've had that break towards the upside. I think it's more clear that we're having this route to happen, but we could also add in a third scenario, is that if we break this barrier here, the 1840 barrier, there is a possibility that if this does happen, we're going to be looking at more bullish setups, but I will have to review the market after that if this does happen, and then we can have a look at what kind of basis and what kind of areas we need to look at for buying situations. But again, that's if we start to break that 1840 barrier. So for now, I still am looking for some possible sell-off situations. Again, we are still ultimately pushing lower from the very higher time frames, weekly, daily, monthly sort of range. So we've been really consolidating and chopping off around here. So the possibility that we could see or expect to sell off is still possible in my eyes. So that's why I'm still going to leave this as my first option here. So if we do start to see a sell off, the situation would then lead to price, where is it going to target? So it would be to the downside, so probably at least at 1720. Then if this does happen, there is a possibility of breaking the 1680 barrier, so all the way down here. So there is a possibility that price could scoop up into this level, but again, really what we're trying to do is just see if we can get to here, review this, how price action responds in this area, and then go from there for our next bias. And that could be a possible buy situation, or it could be a sell. So we're not really too sure there, but I think if price does get to here, it will be around next week or a couple of days. I definitely think this move to the downside will take some time. Again, I could be wrong, but it really depends what how fast this move does happen. So yeah, they're pretty much my two thoughts then or two scenarios that I've got drawn: a downside move and a possible upside move. If we are in an upside, we break that upside level here, we're going to have to review next week on a possible buying situation. Okay, so moving on now to Euro USD. So what I was looking at last week was the situation where we'll get a rally towards the upside, or the second scenario is where we'll get price to break this low here, which I mentioned was our key one, so 1.152, and pretty much we've had that little break lower. So what I'm looking at now is pretty much this situation here, where we're going to be focusing on a possible retest to push lower. I am going to actually still keep this, because if we start to see a flip in price, because remember guys, I'm long-term bullish on this for the time being, not long term, but as in there's a higher bias that I'm looking to target, which is 1.235, which is this level here. So if you scroll back, you'll understand why. But essentially, if we start to see price reverse, so in the sense where price, if we start to see price rapidly push up higher, I am going to try and look into taking some possible buy scenarios, but again, that's if we start to break the 116 barrier. So essentially, if we just move this up a bit more, so if we break this red zone here, we'll be waiting for a retest to possibly push up higher. So that is one possibility. If we take a look at the divergence, it's still kind of clean, so there isn't any divergence for me. So this is why we could expect price to potentially make a retest and then push lower. So that's essentially what we've got mapped out here. So if we just kind of push it up, so price could do something of this nature, where we get price to probably push up just a little bit higher and then push lower. So that's ultimately the downside target. So we could be looking at 1.15 as a downside level, but ultimately it really depends where when we start to see price reverse and make that big bull move. So I am expecting that, and pretty much we're just going to wait for that to happen. But for now, as price action stands, it technically looks like it's capable to push lower. So I'm keeping an eye out also at 1.17 as well. So if we start to break the 1.16 barrier, you know, there's a possibility it could push higher, but I think once we pass the 117, 117 level, I think that would be definite. The most ideal point that we could be looking for more buy situations. But again, it will take some time to develop. So don't feel like you're missing out on the move. Again, just stay patient, wait for our videos even, or just wait for a retest trade. So that's my thoughts on that pair. So let's take a look at Nzdjpy. So my thoughts with this one is we're waiting for this push towards the upside still. So you can see price has made that drop lower, and it still had dropped lower. So what I think could happen now is one or two things. We're going to get one more push lower, or essentially we're just going to push up from this low here. So I'm not going to mark it in, but essentially we're still looking for this bullish move up. I might as well just throw it in. So essentially this will happen, and we'll just look at actually let me do that again. So essentially if this is the proper low, we'll just look at a new continuation trade essentially. So this is why I kind of encourage you not to worry about missing out and trading the bottoms and the lows, because they'll always come back to retest. So don't feel like you're missing anything out. Just try and stay logical with your understanding and stick to your trading plan, I guess. So one of the two scenarios is what I'm focusing on for next week. So let's just see what happens with that pair. Moving on to Aud USD. So effectively I'm looking at more of a push to the downside. I was expecting last week and either price to push up, or we'll get the scenario where price is gonna then push lower. I think that's pretty much, when did we start last week? Hold on one second. 25, 26, 27. So around here, I believe. Yeah, so I was expecting price to probably make one push lower, then one push higher. But ultimately it just dropped off, so that's fine. So we can get rid of this annotation and this one too. So effectively what I'm potentially seeing now is we're seeing a drop off right now, but I think that there is a possible move towards the upside still, in which we could look at targeting 0.765. Again, we've broken our uptrend, so this is where if you've been on our channel a lot, I always mention that there's two scenarios that can happen with a breakout of a downtrend, break of an uptrend or a downtrend, and that if we get a breakout, there is usually an either situation where price will become a fake out, so this will completely reverse and push higher, or we will completely turn over and push all the way back down. So again, it is very difficult to kind of understand, but if you can train your eye to see what's roughly happening along the way, you can pretty much understand when trends are being broken, are fully committed to turning over, or if it's going to be a fake out. So for now, I'm thinking progressively, you know, there is a need to go higher, and that's why I'm following the basis that we need to reach our zone here at 0.675, 0.765, and we could expect price to make one more push up higher and then one more lower, and then from here it's going to be interesting, because if we start to see bullish price action, then it will allow us to take some buys. But if we start to see some deeper lows, then I think possibly even 0.725 would be a nice confirmation to say, yeah, this is now possibly turning lower. And if so, we could be looking at the retest trade from this perspective downside here. So don't need to worry about that too much for now. Let's just see what happens in this area, in this space. But we are, something just to critically mention is that we are broken, well, we have broken out of an uptrend, so there is a possibility of a fake out that's going to be forming over the next few days. So just keep your eyes out for any of that situation. So moving on to USD Jpy. So with this pair, I've got two scenarios again. I think what we looked at last week was we were looking at more of an upside push and then a downside. We didn't really get any of that really. This has just been sideways moving, so I think it's better to kind of reframe our ideas and just kind of start again. So with this, what I'm looking at obviously is this downside range and then this upside range. So just pretty much looking at where price is pretty much returning over. You got your resistance, your support. Obviously, let's take it one step further, what we could expect. So if we start to see a break to the downside, just pretty much this really, nothing too complicated there, and effectively look at an entry on the retest. And then in terms of the upside move is we get the break upside, once again. So this is just a very textbook trade. I mean, you should kind of understand that. I think I have covered this before, but any range that we look at, we kind of, where it's ranging, consolidating, we're just waiting for a retest, nothing crazy. But again, these are not long-term trades, these are short-term. So this is where we only take a little bit of profit, not too much of a profit, if that makes sense. So pretty much just where we're happy, and maybe we try scaling. It's totally up to you. Excuse me. So that's pretty much my thoughts on UJ from last week. It really didn't give us anything, but I know few traders may have been trapped in this scenario. So let's just see what unfolds and go from there. So CAD, JPY, the situation that we're seeing here is price has broken the downside, so we're still seeing more, well, we're now expecting more pushes to the downside, but ultimately there is a possibility of price reversing to the upside. So what we've got drawn here from last week was expecting price to probably continue up pushing higher. The second scenario was that we probably could get a push up higher and then a drop off. So none of those really happened, to be honest. That's why we didn't get involved. And yeah, so since we didn't get involved, we got no trade. No trade means no loss of capital. We get to move on and take a look at take a look again at the situation at hand. So the possibility that stands here is that we could just pretty much look at a retest scenario. So one thing could happen: we get a retest, break lower, and then push higher, or we'll get price to just break low, just maybe once more, and then reverse. So one of the two things really, and maybe if it's even worth it, maybe there's a possibility of taking a sell. Well, you could squeeze in a sell here, but it really would be hedging your risk in terms of the exposure of capital. So again, it's up to you if you do like to trade counter trend moves. I like to if the reward is good. So that's my personal opinion. And then the second scenario is that price can just reverse. So where price is right now, it may just drop just a little bit, but then bolt up towards the upside. So again, we're looking to target at least a 93. So this barrier here is respected nicely, so we could expect price to revert and bolt back up. So that's why I'm thinking long opportunities are pretty much the direction where you want to be going. So yeah, moving on to EJ. So EJ, we had three scenarios. First scenario, didn't really play out as much as we expected. Ultimately, it broke towards the downside following our third scenario, so we can just get rid of that just to save time. Again, if you want to understand where I was thinking with this perspective, just check last week's video. Would have obviously explained every situation at hand. But yeah, so what I'm looking at this again is pretty much we're just waiting for this buying opportunity. So we're either going to be waiting for price to break its low here, so then price as a scenario could push up higher and then drop lower and then push higher, so something like that. And then again, like I said with the previous pair, I think it was CAD, JPY, was it? Cad Jpy. We can look at a sell if you wanted to. If the reward is good, take it. If not, just leave it and sit on your hands for the next opportunity, which I think is a buying opportunity. And again, we're looking to target an upside of 134. So again, we can see that pip count wise, there is a lot in hand, 200 odd, 300 odd. So again, it really depends on your entry, of course, but we're just waiting for a turnover here. So again, you could look at a counter trend move to the downside, as it still has the possibility of pushing lower. We're not really certain that price is going to completely reverse, but again, anything can happen. So we're just staying patient with this. And then the first scenario here is just we could just get price to just push up. So we'll respond accordingly to the market and see what's up, see what's really happening in real time. So Nzdjpy, I think price pretty much is just pushing lower. I'm actually going to move on from this pair because I'm not really focusing on New Zealand dollar, Japanese yen anymore. I think effectively, because it's such, I don't know, I just really haven't been involved in this pair so much. So I am probably just going to skip this pair and avoid watching this from now on. So yeah, I've just kind of left that. But just as this last final analysis then, I guess. So what we could see is price pushing lower. Effectively, I'm looking for a reversal. Well, not looking for a reversal, but you could be looking for a reversal. And effectively following on the bias of Aud Jpy. So we could expect price to push maybe once more lower and then reverse, or this is going to be the bottom and we expect price to accelerate higher, breaking the highs. So the reason why, just as a quick explanation why I'm not looking into Nzdjpy anymore as well, I follow Aud Jpy more and I feel much more comfortable with that pair than Nzdjpy, and there is a bit of a confluence and a similarity with Aud Jpy anyway with Nzdjpy. So I thought rather than just looking at those two pairs, I'd rather just focus on the one, and I decided at the end of the day just to pick Aud Jpy. So that's the reason, and yeah, so let's move on to Aud Jpy now. So for this pair, what I'm looking at is possible move to the downside still. We can expect that price is pushing lower. There was this price action that had dropped off. I believe we missed this one because it was in the Asian time session. So just kind of unfortunate for us, but again, these things happen. There was a little retest here. I wonder if that would have been worthy of trade. Yeah, that was a good 100 or so pips. But yeah, so the next situation that we're looking at now is a possible push towards the upside, but again, it really depends because we're trying to find a bullish situation here because we're trying to reverse back toward the other side. So this pattern could happen. The other one is that price just completely pushes up higher. So it's one of the two really, and if this does happen, again, we're not just looking for just an up move. In terms of entry, it's you know, break higher, and then it's pretty much this scenario where we're waiting for a retest. Oops, clone. We're just simply waiting for a retest higher. Okay, so that's where the entry points would be most considerable if we're looking at a buy. But again, we could be looking at a counter trade trend to take a sell into the low, and then we're going to review what happens here, because if the buy pressure doesn't come in, then this sell pressure will hold, and it could take us all the way down, all the way to down here. But more recently, my bias has been towards the upside. So 86.5. I was looking at 86, but I'm more edging towards 86.5. So that could be your target area to potentially close or even secure some profit. So just as a warning, just to keep a lookout for that. So USD Chef. So 0.91 was my target, sorry, not target, my barrier of reversal point. So this is where we had these two scenarios here, where price first was either going to push up higher or we're going to reverse off this point here. So it did look promising at the end of the week, or when it did come into this level and it had some sort of rejection, but at the start of last week it fell through, and it completely wiped it out. So I'm going to get rid of this zone now, and ultimately it's going to change the trajectory of the entire bias and the way I'm looking at this move right now. So going to have to just erase all of these drawings, because effectively we're going to be focusing on the retest move that we've got drawn here. So we did pinpoint that move out for you guys last week, that if we did get price to break that 0.91 barrier, there is this possibility that we are now going to be pushing lower. So that's where my bias is right now. So the possibilities that stand here is that we're going to either have a price push up, and then we're going to be breaking down all the way down into this low here, so at 89. So pretty much aiming for this low and also aiming for this low here. As we've had multiple confluences here, 89 could be a good region where price may want to go to. So that's where we're targeting now. Now what we have to try and focus on is to see, at some point price is going to want to make a retracement on a higher base level. So this could be a very deep retracement higher, or it could be a very small one. So we don't really know that for now, but what we need to understand is that this could happen, and this is the possibility that price may want to short term be moving bullish. So that's where we could be looking at price moves, and then the second move is where we get into our sells. So ideally what we need to focus on this week is what's happening within this range here. So if we get a breakout, if we get a break to the downside, we're going to possibly wait for price to turn up. So that could be your buy situation. If price breaks towards the upside, we could be looking at buy. So pretty much what we need to do is see where price is going to go. So we're trying to do this, or we're trying to do this. So they're the situations that we're kind of keeping up with and focus with. And likewise, the retest can happen anywhere. So price can break this higher, come back down really deep, but then this low holds as an example and continue the higher. Remember that we're not trying to focus on getting the exact lows, we're trying to get in on where the majority of the move is heading. So we don't need to guess anything. We just need to read price action and structure, and follow the levels that we've got mapped out. So yeah, so this is pretty much the bias and the map that I'm following. Ideally we're trying to target here, but if price does want to reverse and push all the way higher, we need to take a step back and review our overall trade outlook, and it may mean that we go back to that previous idea that we drew before, where we expect a price to break this high and then reverse all the way back down again. But yeah, just a consideration. Don't want to confuse you too much, but again, I just want to explain that there has been a lot of change just by breaking that 0.91 barrier, and I just wanted to explain the overall effect of that zone being broken. Okay, so effectively we are looking at some short-term buying situations, and then ultimately some further down the line longer term sells, and we'll keep you updated as the weeks go on. Okay, so moving on to now USD Cad. So for this, what we're looking at is a possible sell move to the downside. I think that the second move is probably just not as accurate as I wanted it to be right now. So I'm following on the basis of our first idea. So we expected price to probably make, probably make some rejection here and then push lower. But what ended up happening, it pushed through. So I still think that there is a possibility of price, maybe wanting to push it just a little bit higher, but that's where we're going to have to review the trade, because if we start to see more continuations higher and higher and higher, there is a possibility that this could start to reverse and swing. Because remember guys, we are ultimately bullish on this, and we're trying to push higher into 1.29. So I am trying to stay as much as aware as possible for any bull side moves in the market. But yeah, ideally we could see price pushing. We don't really need to go any further with this, but with the idea that we could expect price to make one push up, and if we start to push up higher, is it going to be strong, or are we going to start to see some rejections? So if we do see rejections, we're going to be looking for sells, and it could possibly take us down to the downside at 1.23. and if this does all happen in 1 week, we could be then looking for some buys towards the upside move. Okay, so again, the second scenario is if price is strong and it breaks higher, then that's the case that we're looking at. So yeah, guys, that's essentially where we're standing for this week. Going to record the crypto analysis, so if you are interested in that, stay tuned for the next video, just out in a couple of minutes or so. But yeah, if you are new to this channel, we do have a trading group that you can join. That link is in the description. And again, of course, I do appreciate your time for listening. If you made it all the way to the end, make sure you give this video a like if you've had or gained any value for this week. And yeah, guys, I do appreciate your time, and make sure you subscribe also. And yeah, so thank you all, and we'll see you all in our next week's video.